From Chicago, this is Bruce DuMont with our Beyond the Beltway analysis of national politics, featuring occasional injections of rumor and innuendo, all offered up by our panel of political insiders, pundits, power brokers, public servants, professors, and most importantly, plain-speaking Americans from coast to coast. Tonight, featuring commentary by Stephanie Hitt, Dave Lundy, and Chris Robling. Our program tonight coming from our home base at the Museum of Broadcast Communications in Chicago. Merry Christmas to you all. And again, this program is recorded, so we will have no calls this evening. However, we are still interested in any email. If you want to send us at brucedumont@museum.tv. You want to tweet a comment, it's at DUMO. And of course, you can join us on the World Wide Web, the audio and video portion of our program at beyondthebeltway.com. And also you can find us at our website or our Facebook page, which is Beyond the Beltway with Bruce DuMont. So again, thanks very much. Again, we have a full 2 hours this evening. And again, we are recorded. So we want to begin by asking all of our guests, because we're not only going to be talking about what happened this past week, and it's been a busy week as it always is, but also looking back over the last 51 weeks of the year. And I want to begin by asking everybody who, whether it's an individual or a group of individuals, who is better off today than they were a year ago? And we'll begin with our Democrat, Dave Lundy. Dave?
I'm going to choose a concept. I'm going to say the rule of law is better off today than it was to start the year. You went through a year where there was zero accountability in the Congress for the Republican president. You had Republicans concocting conspiracy theories about the FBI and everybody else and how evil they were. And by the time the year ended, you have the Democrats now taking over the House overwhelmingly. And you have, in court cases, as the Mueller investigation has proceeded, the expectations that the FBI was going to get smacked down haven't happened. Instead, the people who actually were had pled guilty, like General Flynn, are the ones who are actually being held accountable. So I would say the rule of law won this year.
Stephanie Hitt, one of our Republicans. What do you think, Stephanie?
I think actually the group that's probably better off, and by corollary, the American people, is the federal judiciary. We've seen record number of good judges being confirmed in the Senate, and as another corollary of that, that is the revived, energetic enthusiasm for Republicans that was brought on by the Kavanaugh debacle, the Kavanaugh hearings. And so our judiciary, all the way up to the top, is much better off.
And Chris Robling. Look into your crystal ball. Actually, look in the rearview mirror.
In the rearview mirror.
And where are we better off than we were a year ago?
Well, I think the American people are better off, and I think the entire country is better off. And I think that's because we've been taking steps out of what I consider to have been a proto-fascistic regime under Obama, notwithstanding what David said. I think that what we have seen as the year has wore on is sadly greater and greater and greater evidence that the Obama administration had subverted our law enforcement, our intelligence gathering, our intelligence operations, and indeed the Department of Justice, all to political goals. And we now really see a vast abuse of those government authorities, and the more light that is shown on that abuse, the better it will be for all Americans. And let me add to that.
Is that a widespread
the economy.
belief? I mean, would you say that's a widespread belief?
Well, I think it's a widespread belief among all who address the very sad and very troubling facts as they are adduced objectively. And I think that those who are looking at it objectively, Alan Dershowitz or any number of law professors out there, see, and I think the decline of what used to be a liberal stalwart support for civil liberties.
I want to get Dave's response to see, is there anything that Chris has just said that you would acknowledge he might be right on?
No.
Okay.
No, it's a right-wing fantasy. There's no such thing. Nothing Chris just said was true. There's not a widespread belief that it's true. There's not even a narrow belief that's true. There's no evidence that it's true. The notion that the Obama administration was somehow some lawless fascist organization that put together the Justice Department and other agencies to try to suppress civil liberties is a fantasy.
Do you think the image of the FBI is better today or worse today than it was a year ago?
No, the image of the FBI is worse because of the campaign being run by Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and people like Chris Robling.
Is it based on some facts?
No, it's not based on facts, and that is exactly the point that I've been making, and that's exactly what happened yesterday. Literally, Judge Janine, Hannity.
The day before we taped this.
Sorry, yes, the day before we taped this. Hannity, all these guys kept putting all their stock in saying Judge Sullivan is going to slap down Mueller, he's going to slap down the FBI. And instead what he said is that, no, FBI, there's nothing wrong here. What is wrong here is Flynn selling out his country. He literally said, you sold out your country, and he questioned whether the prosecutors had brought adequate charges against Flynn.
Well, but that's one judge in a situation. That's one person. I think sort of more of what Chris is saying, and where I say it is a widespread belief among not just Trump supporters but Republicans, and that is the subversion of the rule of law, or the role of the Justice Department that we're pulling back now and seeing, for example, what went on in the original Hillary investigation on her emails and the staff that was in place there and what was going on in the FBI and a lot of inappropriate conduct that was going on then. And I would say it's not really just theories that people are floating. If you were to, just as an individual, look at the different public statements made by Director Comey himself, I think Americans, based on the flip-flopping and the strange comments that he was making, and the fact that he basically was admitting he was making political decisions, and came out just recently bragging about how they nabbed Flynn in the corner of the White House unsuspectingly, and how he tried to get away with it, doing things that he would never have done to anyone else. I think that damages the FBI's reputation. It damages the feeling that Comey was independent, and it's all Comey's own statements. These are not theories. These are not conspiracies. I think that Americans can connect the dots
themselves.
themselves.
That's a conspiracy of Comey.
Maybe, maybe not. But, he has, but what we've seen is that starting back under Obama, there were all sorts of things going on.
But Comey's, but let's not forget, and I'm sorry, Chris, I'll let you continue, but it's only one of me and two of you.
Exactly. There's
only one of you. I'll sometimes be nice to you, Dave, okay?
But
I'm always nice to
Comey
Dave.
is the reason that Hillary lost. Violating Justice Department rules and releasing what he did 10 days before the election is the reason, one of the many, many reasons, that Hillary lost. So you guys attack Comey, and I'll share the outrage. But that's Comey. That's not the institution.
We will roll on, and the answer to the question is our fourth Democrat, or our second Democrat this evening, called in before the taping with a bad case of laryngitis. So that's why Dave is speaking more than everybody likes.
When you find out that they are real, that all changes, you see. Vampirism is deadly contagious. Goodman Theatre presents Conor McPherson's St. Nicholas, starring Brendan Coyle from Downton Abbey and Mary Queen of Scots, straight from London's Donmar Warehouse, in a performance critics call spellbinding, stellar, and a vicious delight. For a limited time only at Goodman Theatre, you might just have a wicked good time.
Live from Chicago, it's Saturday Night Live, The Experience. For the first time ever, get an inside look at the making of SNL. Over 500 artifacts direct from the show. Be a part of Wayne's World, Weekend Update, and so much more. Experience all it takes to put the show together. Now at the Museum of Broadcast Communications at 360 North State Street in Chicago. For tickets, visit museum.tv.
A line is a powerful thing. It connects the global economy to your living room. Cleaner air to stronger markets. Factory floors to less crowded roads. Today's progress to tomorrow's promise. Norfolk Southern. One line, infinite possibilities.
Bruce DuMont back. As we tape this program, it does not look like the president is going to get his wall. Now, that may change in the next several days, but it doesn't look like he's going to get his wall. What is the political impact of that in your view, Stephanie Hitt?
I don't think it's an immediate impact right now. I think a lot of Trump supporters, they're not, despite what Democrats and the media would like to plant them as, robots who, are triggered by a word like wall, they understand that the wall is really an encapsulating idea for much stronger, greater border security.
Do you agree with that, Chris Robling?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and he'll get a wall. He will get
Or a
his
fence.
wall. He will have something before the November 2020 re-election. I have no question, no doubt. It's probably going to come through the Defense Department. I don't want to lose the thread of our prior conversation, but I know you've brought up a new
Go ahead.
topic. Well, look, I believe that this is the fate of the Republic. I believe that this is the fate of the Republic, and
What is it? Let's put us in context. What is the wall?
the abuses of the Obama
abuse- okay,
administration
okay.
being revealed to the entire world. And I am not Irving J. Donald Trump. I've been very medium on Trump throughout. But I believe that the Obama administration, as every week goes by, and this will continue when the Senate is just Republican and the House goes Democrat. The reason the House Democrats will end basically all of the investigations is because, like David, they don't want the facts to be known. And David is saying there are no facts to
But
base
do you-
this.
but do
it's
you
not just
believe-
Comey. It's I think I'm in support of Stephanie. It's Comey plus a veritable encyclopedia of abuse.
Yeah, but
that is independently
what
verifiable
I
through
would say-
documentary evidence.
Here's what I would say.
Represents that,
I would
yeah.
say that, frankly, one of the reasons, not the major reasons, but one of the reasons why the Republicans did so poorly in the midterms was because a lot of people, mostly women, really were turned off by Donald Trump's personality. Not his policies, his personality. They thought he went overboard. And I think also tied up in that is a lot of independents, when they hear talks of Hillary's emails or the egregious errors of the illegalities of the Obama administration, as you've articulated, Chris, I think they're turned off. It's like for them, Hillary Schmillery, that's yesterday. They want to talk about what's going on now.
I don't
they
deny.
Don't wanna, they don't want to. They don't want to talk
Right.
about
I couldn't
emails.
agree. I couldn't agree with you more. But
But you
law
keep
and-
bringing it up.
But look, I'm sorry, but it's the largest political scandal in the history of the United States.
But is it
and
politically?
it's going to.
Is it?
I don't know if it's political. Look, I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about the rule of law. And folks who are, David was saying that Lieutenant General Flynn is finally being held accountable. Well, a good dozen people from the FBI have lost their jobs, have been cashiered, and there will be more accountability with the new Attorney General. And I am for the legal process sorting this out. And if Lieutenant General is going to be held to account for the Turkey thing, which the judge obviously had wrong and obviously walked back. You see, David didn't tell the whole story. The judge had a recess, left the bench, returned to the bench 25 minutes later, and then withdrew his comments about treason, to which David alluded earlier.
Right.
Now, so David's referring to comments that the judge himself has already taken back. The judge was...
no,
Dave.
you're just changing the subject.
That's
Chris.
not
He
true.
did
But-
not
Let's go
withdraw.
to- let's
He
go to-
did
withdrew
not
the comments
withdraw-
about treason.
He did not withdraw the comment that General Flynn had sold out his country.
Well, and
that he
we're-
did not withdraw. He
I'm
did
sorry,
not
but
withdraw.
We are talking about a judge who
that
has
wasn't
a
before the
reputation
judge.
for
Hold on.
this kind of.
Let's be honest. He was talking about something that was not before him, and he was obviously not in touch with the agreed to non-controversial fact that there was no payment or relationship between Flynn and Turkey from the 20th of January.
I'm looking at it from a political standpoint, and my question to you is, if the Republicans keep talking about this and bringing this up, is there going to be any political benefit to them? And I don't know
Absolutely
whether
not.
there was any political benefit.
As far
to
as I'm
them
concerned, I hope that Chris and the Republicans in the Senate continue to talk about Hillary's emails until the cow comes home. Because you do that, we'll focus on health care. And guess what? And actually, I disagree with you, Bruce. You said that that women were upset about Donald Trump's personality. Yeah, that's true. But they were more upset about child separation. They were more upset about health care. They were more upset about 70 attempts by Republicans to repeal Obamacare and take away the coverage for pre-existing conditions.
Perhaps.
That is what drove this last election. I had a lot of arguments with Republicans and even middle of the road folks who were saying, Dave, Democrats aren't campaigning on anything. And I kept telling them, Scott Stantis from the Tribune, he and I would go back and forth on this. And I said, no, Democrats are campaigning on health care, because that's what people care about. And all this nonsense about Hillary's emails and refighting the last war
So you're
is
going to
pointless.
have a chance to rebuild it, given the decision of the judge in Texas. You're going to get a chance to rebuild it when the Democrats take control.
Well, it's unlikely that decision will be upheld. But
But here's I want to go back to your original premise. Yes, we lost the House, but we didn't lose the House as badly as we did. And then there were predictions we were going to lose the Senate, and it turns out we didn't. And
Well,
I think
grew in the
You lost the House by about what they expected you were going to lose it.
but
No.
the point
41
is
seats
there
is a
was
lot of seats.
I'm going to take some issue with the feeling that women somehow were angry at Trump. To be honest, there were maybe some women who maybe were frustrated or tired of hearing things come out of Trump's mouth that aren't always nice. They're sometimes cringeworthy. But I will tell you, speaking to Republican women around the country and during the Kavanaugh hearings, hearing women come back and re-energized in their support for Trump, despite maybe things that had happened, I cannot tell you enough. Do not underestimate how much those women were researched. I have a good friend, independent, a pro-choice Republican friend. She is on the board of trustees at our college. She is one of the first women hedge fund managers. Someone you'd sort of guess as a liberal. All I heard was, I cannot believe this. I am voting for Trump. I've never voted in the midterm elections. I am voting Republican from now on, no matter what. I think that the bleeding was stopped significantly, and I think that you're going to see that support among women for Trump is not going to be erased in 2 years.
I'll say very briefly, I think that the result, first of all, the results in the midterm House elections were better for Trump than they were for either Clinton or George W. Bush or Barack Obama.
No.
That's number one.
Yeah.
That's not true.
The number of lost seats was lower.
I think more
and
than
number
predicted.
two, it is my opinion that without the Kavanaugh hearings, they would have been worse. They would have been as bad as they were for Obama and for George H.W.
And
George
the Senate.
Bush
The Senate would be more of an issue.
and Clinton. So I believe that the net effect of the Kavanaugh hearings was to enliven the Republican base because they saw Democrats throwing the presumption of innocence, throwing due process out the window to achieve a political effect without any factual basis. And that is supported by the fact that every one of the allegations have been investigated time and again. Not only are there no allegations supported as of today, but in addition to that, several of the individuals who attacked Kavanaugh have been referred for prosecution.
And or some have recanted.
Bruce, I love my Republican friends. I truly do.
You do.
But what they're saying is not supported by the facts. For example, Stephanie would like us to believe that there was a Republican resurgence, a women's resurgence back to Trump. There was a 30-point gender gap. It was the largest gender gap in modern American political history. I'm sorry, it was a chasm. Women fled the Republican Party. Look what happened in Orange County. It was the bastion of conservatism. And there's not a single
that hasn't
Republican
been accurate
in Congress.
for 20 years since Sanchez got elected.
There's not a single Republican left in Congress out of Orange County. This was a bloodbath. And if the Republican Party genuinely believes what these two are suggesting and what Donald Trump is doing, double down on it and let's see how it goes in 2020.
So you want to give more time?
Absolutely. Rock on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the areas where there was some agreement was at the closing, as Congress closed, was criminal justice reform. Now, what's going to be the impact of that politically, in your view? I'm going to start with you, Chris.
Well,
There were 12 Republican senators that said no.
Right.
Everybody else said
Yeah.
yes, and the president's going to sign it.
I believe there is an enormous amount of wisdom behind this. On this very program recently, a few weeks ago, I mentioned the fact that a good part of this started right here in Illinois with a bunch of conservative Republicans who started working with city Democrats because they were personally involved in some of the stories about broken families, broken lives, broken communities, and they knew there was a better way. And in Illinois,
How
this
does it help?
began
How does it help the future of the party?
in the 1990s. I think if Republicans were smart, it could help significantly. I think this is exactly the kind of thing where Republican communication skills have failed time and again to connect members of the party, office holders, actual senators and congresspeople who are going to vote with this, with the communities out there that care the most about these kinds of very important life-saving, family-saving, and community-saving reforms.
Well, I also think what this shows is there's something about, and I think we've talked about this before, is Donald Trump is sort of being lambasted as, this sort of right-wing nut and things like this from the left. But I've always believed he's not a right-wing ideologue. And if the Democrats are smart, and Nancy Pelosi, they could get a lot done with this man because he's looking to get things done.
I want to hear whether Dave thinks that's right and also get his take on the criminal justice reform. I'm Bruce DuMont. Back shortly.
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're the modern Scully family. From the town of Fairfield, meet George Jetson. His boy Elroy.
With instant acceleration, electric cars are more fun to drive and more affordable than ever. Electric cars are here. Plug in to the present.
Honey, what's the best vacation we've ever had?
This one.
Bradenton, Anna Maria Island, Longboat Key. Real, authentic Florida. Plan to visit online at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
You say no?
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Thanks very much for joining us. We're going to let each of our guests now introduce themselves on this eve of Christmas Eve, and we begin with Dave Lundy.
I'm Dave Lundy, president of Aileron Communications. We're a PR and public affairs strategy firm focusing on clean energy development.
And Stephanie Hitt.
I'm Stephanie Hitt. I'm a reformed attorney and a political activist, and I live in Evanston, Illinois, the People's Republic of Evanston, the lone Republican in my neighborhood.
And Chris Robling.
Hi, good evening. I'm Chris Robling, longtime friend of the program.
Well, what else do you do?
I do
When you're
a
not
lot
What
of-
do you do, Chris?
It's
lot
not,
of
you know,
cons-
you're not surviving on this program. I know that.
do a lot of consulting kind of things. Yeah.
Okay. You spend a lot of time in the Middle East. What sort of things do you do over there?
Education, agriculture, some design and construction development. You
Okay.
know.
Okay, very good. I want to get back to Dave and get your response to the criminal justice reform. And is this a once in a lifetime? At least with Donald Trump in the White House, is this a once in a lifetime situation where the Democrats and the Republicans and the liberals and conservatives, many came together on this and had the president sign it, and Jared Kushner obviously was the quarterback of it all. Is this a singular moment in Washington politics?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a growing awareness that the criminal justice system is fundamentally unfair. That some of the excesses in sentencing in the 90s, we went through a period where it was the war on crime, and the only response from elected officials was harsher sentences and harsher sentences and harsher sentences. And the reality is that that left an awful lot of people in jail for decades. And the fundamental unfairness of it, and frankly, the fundamental unfairness to the minority community who were disproportionately affected by this, not just on the death penalty side, but particularly the drug crimes. I think there was a growing bipartisan awareness, and the same thing has happened in Illinois, where we've had some criminal justice reform. I think it's a time.
Well, I think the point that you're making is that in the 1990s, you had a rush to resolve the criminal justice problems, the crime problems in America, that brought Republicans and Democrats together. Everybody got together, and it was basically, 3 strikes and you're out. Well, lock them up, throw away the key. But that was a bipartisan effort. That was a bipartisan effort supported by a lot of the prison unions. So a lot of the money that came from that, and that was a situation that started in California and then sort of moved east and picked up, the tremendous support of President Clinton when he became president. And now it's a generation later, and you have many of the same forces joining together and basically saying, we screwed up. We've been wrong.
Well,
this was not a good idea 30 years ago.
No, in fact, we had a situation within the last month that I became aware of because I share a namesake, where a homeless man named David Lundy, who had been convicted of a variety of petty crimes, wound up shoplifting $33 worth of underwear and getting a sentence of 10 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I mean,
See, this kind of thing.
This is exactly why
we basically took a lot of judges and put their hands in shackles relative to a convicted offense, and we said there's a sentencing guideline, and you're going to be in this lane, and you can't get into another lane, and that sent folks like this other Mr. Lundy, and I think that shocks the conscience. I also think it's, if I may go back to, you guys are both lawyers, and I went to law school, but I want to say, if you're going to, for instance, we were talking about, David referred to the death penalty. So as a Fourth Amendment conservative and a Republican and a person who cares very much about civil liberties, you're taking away somebody's liberty, that's one thing. Taking away somebody's life is something very different. And, in the United States for a long time, we wanted to have the death penalty for whatever reason, and we weren't willing to spend the amount of money that is necessary to make sure that indigent defendants, very frequently minorities, were properly represented against the, practically speaking, unlimited resources of the state, whether it is a state that's prosecuting them or, in the rare instance, of the federal government. And so you end up with all these things where there's some state prosecutor who can basically do whatever he or she wants, and here's an indigent defendant with a public defender. And they've got parsimonious resources for an independent investigation, for any kind of forensic analysis, or to mount any kind. And so what do we end up with, 15, 20 years later? A innocence project that is going back and using DNA and science to say these people were wrongly. Well, now, to have taken the life of an innocent person is conceivably the worst offense any criminal justice system could ever do. And now we I don't know that we can say we've got Joe Smith that is identified, but with this many people who were wrongly convicted, we probably did. And that is horrendous.
Well, I think one of the things is this is kind of one of those rare bills where it was based sort of on reality, what we've learned in reality, and also has a lot of common sense in it. So by giving judges more leeway now, for example, with sentencing and so on, and understanding, I mean, what we've learned is that there are certain types of criminals that will not do better in prison or whatever, that, you know, that there were options for education and halfway houses, and being able to deliver.
Or you can learn your lesson very quickly in your sentence.
Exactly.
You don't
can
need
learn
20
it.
years.
Exactly.
You probably learned it after 3.
And, you know, maybe you learn your lesson with an educational component. And this bill provides for that, and it allows judges the really, you know, they're the ones right there best able to determine these situations. We finally put that power back into the judge's hands, which I think makes a lot of sense. Maybe we could do this with healthcare. I don't know.
Well, that's an issue, because this also came out of one of the other interesting things about this. This came out of programs that were being worked on and tried in the states. The incubators were the states. They were the states of the idea. And it was many conservative Republican states that were leading the way on this.
Right.
And then some other states decided, well, we're going to get on this. So this is the local state governments basically teaching the federal government how to correct themselves.
States as laboratories of democracy.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
That was the
isn't
original
that
plan.
sort of, I mean, to kind of get on a high Pollyanna level here, that's kind of how our laws should be created and developed, that we have these states, we have resources to do this, and then these laws can be passed.
Healthcare be the next
Well,
then?
and that's rather than it being shoved down someone's throat.
No, the Democrats won't allow it to happen with healthcare because they're convinced that they
About
serve
control.
their public employee union constituency best
I
by
prefer
imposing.
I prefer to let Robling speak for me.
They
No
impose
Pollyanna for
a
healthcare.
one
No,
size
speak for the
fits
Democrats.
all.
Speak for the Democrats.
Don't you support one size fits
and
all?
once again, my friend Mr. Robling is untethered to reality. Look, Democrats would like to see healthcare work for all Americans. We have said from the get-go that there were issues with Obamacare that needed to be addressed. Republicans refused to cooperate with Democrats and instead insisted upon removing it root and branch, as they said repeatedly in their 70 attempts to repeal it. Could Democrats do this if Republicans actually sit down in good faith to come up with a system? Of course they could. There's zero chance the Republican Party is going to do that.
Is there some state that's doing it right now? Doing it right? If we look at 50 states, is there some state that is handling their health care issue better than the federal government?
Hang on.
For instance,
There's a
go
limit.
ahead. All right.
There's a limit to what states can do, given the federal system. That said, one thing that's going to take place under the new governor in Illinois is that there will be a public option. And the option will be to allow people to buy into the Medicaid system. And that doesn't mean that the state pays. It means I get to pay my Medicaid premium, and there will now be a public approach. I think that a hybrid system in this country is what we need to do. And right now, the system is totally dysfunctional. We're paying the most for healthcare and getting outcomes that are middle of the pack. It's a problem.
This is what they said before Obamacare. And
Right,
they
and
got
had you bothered to
Obamacare.
cooperate, we might have had a better system.
So they're blaming the people who pointed out the deficiencies for the deficiencies. I want to give you an example. You asked the question about the states. States as laboratory of democracy. Okay. Prior to Obamacare, there were 46. That's 46 states that were running high-risk pools, and they were operating flawlessly. So catastrophic or pre-existing conditions were covered. Okay. Now, David, to this day, on this very program, at this very table tonight, has reiterated the falsehood that Republicans are against pre-existing. That's not true. And it wasn't, and Democrats weren't against it either. In the HIPAA reforms of 1996, sounds like a long time ago, Clinton was president, Gingrich was speaker, they passed the HIPAA reforms, and what did they do? They authorized every state to create the high-risk pools. So, folks with pre-existing conditions, folks with catastrophic, they were going to be covered out of the state high-risk pools. 46 states were operating flawlessly.
And yet you had
Four
20%
states-
uninsured
four-
in this country.
That is not true.
It's totally
in the
true.
40. Hold on. The 4 states that were operating outside of the mainstream: New York, California, I think New Jersey, and maybe Illinois. I'm not sure. No, Illinois was a good one. But the 4 states were very large, disproportionately large. And in the 46 states, everyone could get coverage. In the state of Illinois, there wasn't a person in 98 or 99 or 2000. David is referring to a canard.
No, I'm not referring to canard. And if Kitty Kurth were sitting here and not homesick, she would be the first one to tell you that she and Kevin couldn't get health insurance because of their pre-existing conditions. So what you are saying is untrue.
No. Here is what they are saying is they were not prepared to pay the price of the state of Illinois for the high-risk pool.
So you can
We're
get
going
health
to
care
pause, and we're
not
going
of
to take
means.
the issue
Great.
of health care and put it off the table for the rest of the year. We'll be back with more discussion when we roll on from Chicago.
Are you headed?
If you look hard enough, go off the beaten track far enough, you'll find an America teeming with the unusual, the odd, the downright strange.
I'm Will Klinger, and I'm your guide on a package tour we like to call
Wild Travels.
Join us on our weekly road trip to see America's most offbeat and unusual attractions. Tuesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on WTTW Prime.
When CSX moves forward, so do the rest of us.
Well, thank you all, and we're very happy that you're with us on this Christmas Eve show, and thanks very much. As you know, we do this program from the Museum of Broadcast Communications, and for the last several weeks, we've been talking about our GoFundMe campaign, and that is used to keep the satellite, which sends this signal to your local station. It has nothing to do with your local station. This is about the ability to get the program from our offices here in Chicago and studios in Chicago up on the satellite and to stations all over the country, including Sirius XM satellite radio. If you would like to help and feel in the Christmas spirit, you can go to GoFundMe.com, GoFundMe.com. Look under Beyond the Beltway with Bruce DuMont. It'll all be explained there. If you'd like to join us, we've had a lot of people respond, some of the listeners over the last couple of weeks. It's good to have and also a lot of the nice little notes. I mean, the number of people that we're getting with those donations, it's very heartwarming to know that, this is one of the highlights of their week by getting together with their husband or their spouse and talking about politics and listening to what we have to do here. So again, we appreciate having the ability to bring all of our divergent guests to you each and every Sunday night. There is a cost to it. It's getting pretty prohibitive for yours truly. So I would appreciate your help. Again, GoFundMe.com and go to the Beyond the Beltway. Click into BeyondTheBeltway.com. You'll find it, and it's easy. It's very easy to donate. So please do so before the end of the year. And thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let's get back to an issue that was huge at the beginning of the year, and then it fell off the track. And that is the DACA kids. It looked like the DACA kids were very, very close to being dealt with. And then you haven't heard about the issue for a long, long time. Dave, what happened? Did the Democrats miss an opportunity to deliver for the DACA constituency, most of whom are probably Democrats?
Yeah, I don't think they missed the opportunity to deliver. I think that, there was that big public meeting that Trump had a negotiation before the cameras, and he said in that meeting that he would sign any bill that allowed the DACA kids to stay, and that he felt badly for them, and he thought it was unfair, and so on. And apparently, he as soon as the cameras went off and he went back, he was told, no, you can't do any of that. So he backed out, and it seemed like a non-starter, and then we went nowhere. And
that's not what happened.
That's actually, I think what happened was the Democrats tried to use them as a political tool to sort of maybe force a shutdown, some changes, try to get Trump to do some things. Luis Gutierrez did threw himself on the sword, said, I'd be willing to pay for the wall to help these people. But then when the issue went away and the government got refunded and wasn't shut down, it got completely forgotten. Because again, I think what we saw is twice this year, we saw Democrats willing to make political statements and to use issues for their own political ends.
Well,
one was
never do that.
DACA, and the other one was Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, what I think happened with the DACA kids, which is a terrible tragedy, and it's entirely on the Democrats. They were looking for about 600,000 or 700,000 of these kids to gain status, and Trump responded to that by offering it for 1.4 million. That wasn't good enough, and here's why. It's not what David said. It's not even exactly what Stephanie said. Trump had 4 points. His points were he wanted to end chain migration. He wanted to build the wall and take border security steps. He wanted to be absolutely sure that the folks who were coming in were going to be benefiting the economy and not drags on the economy through just recipients of public benefits. And he had another point that was, I think, pretty straightforward. He said he would sign any bill that did those 4 things. What happened in the public meeting in that time is that a couple of Democrats started jackpotting the president in front of the cameras, and this was Dick Durbin and some of those guys. And I don't disagree with David that the issue got muddied after the presidential meeting. I don't disagree with that. But the truth is, Donald Trump, I think, when you say you need 600,000 or 700,000 straightened out, and he comes back with the bigger category. Why? Because at the Obama administration, they were talking about the 1.4 million. They opened it up, and only the 700,000 came to sign up. Trump said, look, I'm not going to live with the 700. I'll take the 1.4. That was not good enough for Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer.
But the one piece of that I don't think is totally accurate, and that is the president did do that. He took a large number and he almost doubled it,
right,
and made it available. And that surprised people. That was not something that anybody in his base was asking him to do. It was, to me, it was a profile in courage. But he did say, "I want." In response to that, I want the wall. That was the alleged agreement that he had with Chuck Schumer.
And
in fact,
at that point,
I said the wall and the border security.
And the Democrats were willing, at that point, to swallow hard and go for that, including Luis Gutierrez.
And $25 billion they were willing to put up.
But when the president came back and said, we're going to do a few other things, we're going to do the chain migration, we're going to change it a few more, that's when the Democrats backed away. That's when the Democrats said, that's too much. If it's the wall for the DACA kids straight up, we'll do it. But it was the president that put the other, because of the pressure coming from House Republicans, they were the ones that wanted to get tough. The wall, they wanted more than just the wall.
Right.
And when they wanted more than just the wall, the Democrats backed away, and this is when it
Bruce is
all went south.
100% correct. Trump moved the goalposts, and when he moved the goalposts, the Democrats said, No, we're not going that far. And let's not forget, chain migration sounds evil. That's how I got into that's how my ancestors got into the country. That's probably how your ancestors got into the country. Yes, they came in and one answer. Chris, I'm sorry, but what you're about to say is not true. What happened is that people came in and then they raised money and then they brought in their brother and then they brought in their cousin.
That's not
and that's
the
how
chain migration system
that's
of today.
exactly what chain migration
That
is.
is not the chain. And what the chain migration system was, first of all, I can tell you there was no chain migration when Enoch Fitzhenry ran onto New York soil to get away from the British in 1755. Okay, so I can
Fine. Okay, I will grant you that.
Thank you. And then,
but there sure was when my ancestors came here.
Well, and however they got in, we're glad they did.
Well, and
Okay?
as someone who is, in fact, part Native American, Thank you guys for coming to our country. But I think
Unlike
also,
certain senators
let's talk
from
about
the
some of the practical
state
things.
of Massachusetts.
They were up against.
I want to
I've
see
got
that
my 23andMe report. I more than double.
We're out of.
Welcome to the world, 2116. You can fly across town in minutes, or across the globe in under an hour. Whole communities are living on Mars, and solar satellites provide Earth with unlimited clean power. In less than a century, Boeing took the world from seaplanes to space planes, across the universe and beyond. And if you thought that was amazing, you just wait.
Today, fresh fruits and vegetables will go from a field in California to a grocer in Miami. A bottle of beer from Eagle Pass will journey to a restaurant in Manhattan. A 2x4 in Oregon will find its way to a townhome in Denver. A hybrid will say goodbye to Detroit and hello to a showroom in Austin. While a steel beam will leave a mill in Illinois for a high-rise in Phoenix. And a flat screen in China will head to an electronics store in Memphis. Because today, as every day, wherever you find business, you'll find us.
Live from Chicago, it's Saturday Night Live, The Experience. For the first time ever, get an inside look at the making of SNL. Over 500 artifacts direct from the show. Be a part of Wayne's World, Weekend Update, and so much more. Experience all it takes to put the show together. Now at the Museum of Broadcast Communications at 360 North State Street in Chicago. For tickets, visit museum.tv.